Hi there. In this video, we'll be covering how to start writing a book about your life. Writing a book is such an awesome experience, and the steps you take could mean the difference between finishing and not finishing your book. By the end of this video, you will learn how to think differently about your story, how to make your book's message as strong as possible, and how to make consistent writing progress. And stay tuned until the end of the video for a resource that I really think is going to help you finish your book. Let's dive in. So you're thinking about writing a book about your life. That is such an awesome thing. I'm so happy that you're coming to this place in your life that you want to reflect, that you want to look back, that you want to think about getting words down about your story and sharing this message with somebody. It could be a relative, it could be a friend, it could be the wider world. It's really up for you to decide how big you want this book to be, where you want to share it, and what you want to have happen from it. But it really starts with having a story, having a message to share. What is your message? When you go to a party and get introduced to people, what do people say about you? Maybe it's about your career, maybe it's about an interesting accomplishment, maybe it's something that's formative happening during your childhood years. Could be anything really, but it really is so important as you think about writing a book to tap into what your message is. What you want to say with this book. A lot of times when people think about writing a book, they think about every single thing that happened in their story. And not all of those things are going to be applicable to the message that you want to share. There might be stories from your teenage years, they might be interesting, but they don't actually move the story along. It's so valuable to think about the frame, to think about the mindset and the focus that you want to have for this book. And really tap into that, really spend some time thinking about what you want to say, and then start thinking about the things that you want to include into the book to build up that story and to make it really memorable. A big focus too as you embark on this journey is to think about your goals. What do you actually want to accomplish from this book? Maybe you want to inspire and inform the next generation of people in your career. Maybe you want to document a family story for future generations. Whatever the case may be, think about your goals. Think about why you're writing this book. Why do you want to share it? What do you want to accomplish from it? Do you want to become a standout speaker? Do you want to get better interview requests? Do you want to establish yourself as a thought leader or CEO? Whatever the case may be, having that end goal in mind at the beginning of the process is going to make things a little bit easier, because now you're going to think about what you have to do to get to that finish line, what you have to do to accomplish that goal. Because if you want to be a standout CEO, for example, and that's what you want to accomplish with your book, you're going to want to do things and put things in the book to establish that, to focus on your career, focus on the ups and downs of your business career and your journey. If you want to share something with your family, you're probably going to focus more heavily on the family side. So as you think about your book, really think about what you want to accomplish from this, and then start working backwards. Start with the end goal in mind, then fill in the details from there. Another thing that you really want to think about at the beginning of this process is how your book compares to other books that have already been published. You don't want to write a book that sounds and feels exactly like Atomic Habits or Start With Why or something else. You want it to be original and unique, and the way to make it original and unique is to kind of recognize what's already out in the world and then figure out where your story fits into that. What bookshelf do you want to see your book on? What other books compare strongly to your book? What other books would you expect to see on the same table at a bookstore as your book? Thinking about those books and positioning your book against those other books can be helpful. When people ask you what your book is about, you can explain to them in shorthand, it's like this other book, but different because of this. What makes it different? What makes it unique? Part of that process is bringing in your uniqueness, bringing in your voice, bringing in your unique lens through which you see the world. No one's going to see the world like you do. No one's going to have the same exact experiences as you did, even though there are universal truths to be found in your story. So it's so valuable to really think about what's already out there, what books are already out there, and how your book fills a void, fills a need, that people need to read this book and they haven't been able to yet because it doesn't exist, but you're the one to write it. The next step to start writing a book about your life is book foundation work. I know this process can feel mundane and tedious, but this is really about building a strong foundation on which you can then write. You can write with authority, you can write with purpose, you can write with power behind it, knowing that this book is as strong as possible, that you've done all of the work, the prep work necessary to feel empowered in the writing process. When I talk about book foundation work, there's really 3 or 4 different things I think about. The first is the hook. What is the reader takeaway, and how are they going to carry your book's message forward with them into their life? When I think about hook, I often think about Amazon reviews. When someone leaves a 5-star review and says, "This book changed my life, it forced me to reconsider something that I was, closed-minded on or not doing properly. It forced me to think differently about it." And you know that their life has changed because of this book. That's the kind of thing that you're thinking about with the hook. What is that thing that people are going to carry forward? And when people ask them, what books are you reading? Have you read any good books lately? They're going to say, "I read this book by this person and it's so good and it moved me." That's the kind of thing that you want. And you really need to figure out what that hook is and be able to share it. You want the reader to know what the takeaway is, what they're going to learn from your book. If you don't explain that and you're not clear about that, they're going to get confused or lost. It's also possible that the right reader is not going to find your book because they don't know what the takeaway is. So you really need to be clear about that and understand what the reader takeaway is so you can make the book as strong as possible for that focus. The next element of book foundation work ties into that. It's audience. Who is your audience for the book? It could be an audience of 1. It could be an audience for 1,000,000. Think about your audience. Make it clear on every single page. Understanding your audience is going to ensure that you write a book for them. You don't want to write a book that's either too high or too low of a reading level for your audience because they're going to get frustrated. They're going to walk away. They're going to stop reading. You want to hit them exactly where they need to be met, but you need to also understand where your audience is. Once the book is published and you want to promote it, what media outlets, what podcasts, what websites, what social media outlets are you going to focus on? Where are you going to reach people? Understanding who the people are that you want to reach, the type of person, the background, the interest that they have. Understanding that is going to help you understand then where to go to meet them. So audience is such a huge part of your book. The next element of book foundation work is your outline. You want to figure out what is inside and outside of the scope of the framework of this book. What process, what steps, what path, what journey is the reader going to follow to get from the beginning and end to the book? What things do you want to include in the book? Understanding what you want to include into the book is going to make it so much easier to actually write, because you're going to write with clarity and purpose. You know that everything you're writing, at least the way you planned it, is going to be in the book. Otherwise, if you don't outline ahead of time, you could write a lot of things that don't end up being in the book at all. Now you've wasted time on the writing process. This is really about making the writing process as efficient as possible. Having that outline is going to allow you to focus on the things that you need to write instead of just haphazardly writing, then hoping against hope that these are the things that end up in the book. Another element of book foundation work that I started using over the last year or two is a positioning statement. It's really a 1-sentence explainer of everything, the themes and the scope of the book. And this is more of an internal thing, just kind of understanding what you want to include and the elements that you want to see, because then I go through the chapters and say, okay, how do these chapters align with the central theme of the book? If they don't align with the central theme, the chapters need to either be adjusted or removed because they don't fit within the scope of this book. So understanding what you want to keep inside the book, the themes that you want to cover and convey, kind of brings all of these elements of book foundation work together, and then you can get to the writing process. All right, we've covered a lot of ground in terms of prep work, book foundation work. Let's talk about writing. Writing is the bread and butter. Without the writing, there's no book. You really need to do the writing to get this thing across the finish line. There's so many different ways that we can go about writing a book, and they're all open to you. They're all opportunities for you. You can certainly sit at a keyboard and type away. Another thing that I often do is I will record myself talking. I will talk through different elements of my writing and use that as a foundation for words. I will actually take audio recordings, upload them to an automatic transcription website like Otter or Rev, and turn that into automatic text. I can then use it to clean it up, build chapters out that way. It's really interesting, especially for people who want to use a conversational writing tone and are really closely aligned between their speaking voice and their writing voice. If you really want your writing voice to be infused with the elements that you use in your speech, audio recordings are a great way to do that. They're a great way to get your voice right onto the page, and they're a great way to get quick progress. You know, you want to make progress with this writing. You can sit at a keyboard and type away, or you could go for a walk for an hour, go for a drive, you know, and get lots and lots of words down just from a conversation with yourself. So whatever the case may be, think about what works for you. Think about your process for writing. Think about what's going to be easiest, because you really just want to take away friction points. And that ties into the entire writing process too. Take the time for yourself. Take time to write. You know, whether it's once a week on Monday nights, whether it's Thursday mornings, block out the time, you know, put your phone aside, turn off your alerts. You know, focus is the most important and valuable tool that we have for writing. You need to be focused to do your best work. And if you're not focused, if you're constantly distracted, you're going to be out of your element and you're going to be wasting time. You're going to be wasting precious time, where if you have 10 or 30 minutes of focus time, you can get so much writing done just by writing. Not cleaning it up, not making it perfect, just writing. You can always fix it later. You know, but getting that focus time is so valuable, especially in today's busy world. It's so tough, and we're constantly distracted by pop-up alerts and emails and messages and phone calls and everything else. Take the time to be unavailable, take the time to turn off the alerts, and take the time to be focused. By being focused, you're going to be able to make the most of the time you have, instead of thinking about blocking out tons and tons of time. You know, I know people who struggle with their writing who will block out 2 or 3 hours, and they have to, you know, make the perfect cup of coffee, and then they make their breakfast, and the sunlight has to be coming through the window at a certain angle, and the temperature needs to be a certain way, and the music needs to be set up this way. Now you've spent half an hour doing all these things that don't actually involve writing, you know? And I'm not against any of those things. We've all done it from time to time, you know, but it's about making the most progress possible and cutting out the friction points and the distractions, and cutting out the things that are keeping you from writing. So whatever those friction points are, whatever your process looks like, find a way to simplify it, find a way to make it easier, and find a way to focus in when you're doing your writing, and you'll be able to make the most amount of work in the least amount of time. The last point I want to make is this. I know how tough it is to write a book. I've written or ghostwritten 30 of them, and it is a process. It is a struggle. You know, it's like wrestling an alligator. It is a really tough thing, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. The more you focus on it, the easier it gets. And there's going to be points in time when you're going to doubt yourself, when you're going to feel like your book's not good enough, when you feel like your message isn't good enough. Lean into those feelings, lean into those doubts, lean into those insecurities. Challenge it. You know, you really want to challenge it as much as possible, because doing so now, doing so in the writing process is a lot easier than just going along with it, not really listening to your gut, and just going along with the book, and then it gets published. You know, and then there's people on Amazon saying, oh, I didn't like this book. You're going to want to steel yourself, and you're going to want to be as strong as possible for when that time comes. You know, there's going to be people who give you feedback and criticism. There's going to be internal voices inside of you that say, this isn't good enough, or my story doesn't matter, or whatever the case may be. I want you to step into any bookstore, or go on Amazon, search around. Look at how many books are published. Look how many books are written. How many of them are good books? How many of them are bad books? There's so many bad books out in the world. I've written some of them. I've worked on some of them. It happens. This is your opportunity to write a great book, and this is your opportunity to write something that has an impact. Your book matters. Your story is worth telling. It's so easy to get lost, confused, distracted, or say, you know, my story's not good enough. It is good enough. You know, the fact that there's so many books out there tells me it's good enough, tells me there's something in there that matters and it's worth telling. And if you really do the deep work to figure it out, do the deep work to, you know, make consistent progress, do the deep work to keep going, to work through the doubts and insecurities and friction points that pop up, it's so exciting and special to be able to get to the opposite side and publish your book. It really could change your life. There's so many things that could happen from publishing a book. So many doors that could open that don't exist currently, that you don't even see, you know, and the door could open if you publish your book. So getting past this bridge, it can change everything, but you need to get past that bridge. You need to get past that canyon, that point of contention. You got to keep working through it. But if you think about the end goal and you think about the things that are on the opposite side of that bridge, it's the momentum that could help you to keep going. So don't give up, believe in yourself, believe in your story, and keep going because your story matters. If you want to learn more about how to start writing a book about your life, I have a course. I have a weekly good book accountability course that I developed for people just like you. I know how tough it is to keep going. I know sometimes that all we need is that little boost, that fire underneath us to stick with it, to make consistent progress. So if you're interested, if you want to be a part of this group, just go to my website. It's goodbookmastery.com. You can click the link below and sign up for my Good Book Accountability course and get that little boost you need to keep going, to build momentum, and to finish your book. Remember, a good book can change your life. I'm Dan Good. Thanks for watching.